Yesterday, Today, Tomorrow. My name is Mariana Cordier, and I am your host. Today, we're going to talk about domestic violence, the opioid crisis, and employers. Did you know there are qualified disabled people who can work for you? Well, we're going to talk about that. My guests are Tom DeGonia. He's a former prosecutor and an attorney with Etheridge Quinn. And I have Marta Bojorquez, who is with a Jewish Social Service Agency. She is the Employment Development Coordinator, Specialized Employment Services. So welcome. I'm so happy to have you guys. And let's start off with domestic violence. It's an uncomfortable topic. Some people don't want to even acknowledge that it's around, but there are a lot of challenges to helping folks who are victims of domestic violence. Can you shed some light on that for us, Tom?
Sure. As you said, it's not a comfortable topic, and it's one that people don't always want to talk about, but the pandemic has heightened that even more, especially when you're in a situation of domestic violence. Home is not always the safe place. And during the pandemic, people were forced to be at home, oftentimes with their abusers. So we had to come up with new and more creative ways to allow victims of domestic violence to reach out for help. And that there were a lot of challenges, both for the court as well as for law enforcement in responding to those.
How did you, or what was the policy to address the housing issue? Because, with domestic violence, you want to separate the parties, but housing was such a problem. What was the approach to that?
Well, I think it was definitely a challenge. You didn't know, especially during the height of the pandemic, if someone was positive, if they were not positive. This was even before there were vaccinations. You had someone who was seeking protection during a protective order where there's mandatory moving out of a house, and you don't know where they're going to go, or if they are going to go somewhere, how are they going to be able to afford that? So it really exacerbated the challenges that already existed. And really stretched, I think, a lot of people to the breaking point, but also on the system. Fortunately, in Montgomery County, we've got the Montgomery County Family Justice Center, which is a one-stop shop for victims and their families. And they continue to operate throughout the pandemic under the guidance of the Sheriff's Office, coming up with new and creative ways to help deliver services to people seeking to get out of those abusive relationships.
And what would you say to victims who are, not sure what to do, or what are their options? What would you tell them?
Help is there. Help is always there. Call, text, email. The Sheriff's Office set up a designated line, a hotline, a texting line, so that people can reach out for that assistance. The courts did, I think, a pretty nice job of pivoting and enabling more and more people to have access, when they had access, to remote hearings in order to get the relief they needed. So help is there. That's what I would say to someone who is in a relationship now that's abusive. Help is there. Call the Family Justice Center. We will get you some help.
And what are some of the options through the courts that people have that are unfamiliar with the system and don't know what they can do?
Well, certainly one of the first things is a protective order. You can apply in person now that we're out of some of the pandemic rules. You can apply in person at a district court commissioner. You can apply in person at the district court in both Rockville and Silver Spring. And that essentially is telling a commissioner, I need help. I'm in an abusive relationship. My child is in an abusive relationship. The child's a minor. They can apply on behalf of the child. And it's violence, threatened violence, in order to order that person to leave you alone, that spouse, boyfriend, girlfriend, intimate partner, to leave you alone and to get some separation. And separation is important. It's been difficult during the pandemic, but separation is even more important now.
That's awesome. And so there are resources for the audience to know. You can reach out. There's the Sheriff's Office on the websites. If you do a search, you can find the information. On the YouTube channel, we will post all the phone numbers, websites, and links if you're interested in finding help or finding help for someone you know. I was going to ask Marta to join us in this conversation now on a little bit of a lighter note about your work. It's amazing what you're doing. Why don't you tell the audience a little bit about it?
Yeah, sure. First of all, thank you, Tom, for what you shared. I have to say, I was a victim of domestic violence myself. So, but that was back in my country several years ago. That's the reason why I came to the United States, honestly. And I find it very, very hard that for women, especially, to speak up unless they are decided to end the relationship. If you're going to end the relationship, you feel more comfortable to call the police. But what would you say to someone that still wants to save the relationship but wants to be respected? You know, it's so hard.
It's often a challenge because there are so many things at play. Oftentimes, this is someone who you love or you've had a long time relationship with. You may still have children together. And so it's not so easy to just simply walk away or call the police. And one of the things that we've come to recognize in addressing that is it's not a one size fits all. It's not just a black and white, yes or no, end it, don't end it. And so Montgomery County does have something that's called the Abused Persons Program. They do offer counseling. And it's a recognition that this is a relationship, even if you and your spouse no longer live together, or the parent of your child no longer live together, you still have children together, and you're still going to have an ongoing relationship for at least the next 18 years. So it's not as simple as just simply walking away. And that's one of the things that I've seen both as a prosecutor and as a defense attorney. It's, you know, you're dealing with people's lives, not just a problem to be solved. This is something, and I'm glad to see that our Department of Health and Human Services offers counseling. They offer structured counseling so that it's not just a one solution.
Thank you very much.
Oh, sure.
So going back to your question, Mariana, yeah, I have the pleasure of working with people with disabilities, helping them find employment. I've been doing that for the last 20 years, and I honestly love what I do. I encounter a lot of rejection, but the way I see rejection is maybe you don't accept someone at this moment, but in a couple of years, you might change your mind completely. And that has been my experience many, many times. We work at Jewish Social Services with people that have any kind of disabilities, developmental, intellectual, physical, and mental. So, but the way we work with them is they have to be able to work independently. So we provide support, putting together a resume, cover letter, how to dress for an interview, how to present yourself, how to answer questions in an interview. But then during the interview, we're also there. We go with them, we support them, we build their self-esteem, because that's part of having a disability. Many of them have very little self-esteem, and the fact that most of them have not worked for many, many years. So, and at the end,
is there an age range of your customers, if you will, that you're helping to find work?
Yeah, we call them job seekers, and they are 18 and over, but we have a program for younger ones that are internships, unpaid internships. So that is something that any employer could reach out to me, to the organization, and we will put them in touch with young people who might have, I don't know, autism, for example, but they might be excellent at some tasks, especially repetitive tasks that other people hate doing. They might excel doing it, but they don't have the people skills, in other words. So there's always something, but it's wonderful to work with them, give them an opportunity, see how they grow, see how they develop. It's wonderful.
And if you were to be having a conversation with an employer, what are some of the tips or suggestions you could have to the audience that may have employers out there that are thinking about helping out and employing disabled job seekers, but are a bit intimidated as to whether or not they can offer the right environment?
Sure. So the first thing I would do is I visit the employer site to take notes of everything, the amount of light sometimes that can be bothersome for some people. Is it a noisy place? Is it a quiet place? Is there a lot of traffic or not? Every little thing matters. Are they going to sit? Are they going to stand for 8 hours? So I take notes of all of that, and I take notes of what are the needs of the employer. In my organization, we give as much importance to the person with disabilities as we give to the employer. And that's what makes us successful, that we are providing customer service, not just to the person with disabilities, but also to the person, to the employer. We have partnerships with places like Enterprise, CVS, Chick-fil-A, Dave & Buster's, you name it. There's a lot of organizations that have partnered with us. I think we have a total of 200 employers or companies in the last just 5 years or 6 years. And our success, we don't measure it by placing one person, but by some employer calling us and saying, I love your client, Greg, and I would love to have 2 more Gregs if possible. So when they call me for more people with disabilities, that means success for us.
Well, I have to admit that I was one of those employers. I had 2 young ladies in my office, and I have to tell you that aside from the tasks that they were completing that I have to admit nobody else wanted to do and they loved doing it, was their personalities really lit up the office. They really brought a lot of positive energy to the office. Have you found other employers saying the same thing?
Absolutely. Hiring people with disabilities increases the morale of the organization. I'll give you an example. I had a client that was very, very limited, but his wonderful attitude, I took him as a client. My boss told me he might be too much, but I said, no, I want to take him. He was born blind. He had autism. He had cognitive disabilities, and he was on dialysis. So 4 disabilities in one person, it was really difficult, but he had a beautiful attitude, completely blind, remember. So I placed him at Dave & Buster's doing something very simple that for any of us would be like not very meaningful, but for him, it was everything. He would look forward every day to go to work, rolling silverware. He will have to roll like 400 silverware every day. So he loved it. And you know what started happening? He will be there 1 hour earlier before his shift because he didn't want to be late. And when it was time to go, because of the autism, they get a little bit obsessed. So someone has to tell them, hey, it's in half an hour, you're done. Hey, in 15 minutes, you're done. And then, okay, it's time to go. They have to be pushed out of the door. And with that, the rest of the staff, they kind of got a lesson, here I am complete and I'm coming 20 minutes late, or I always have excuse, or I look down on my job, when this person that has all these limitations loves what he's doing and loves this opportunity. So
actually, that's a good lesson for all of us. Sometimes I think we forget to be
absolutely.
grateful for what we have.
Yes.
But and now I wanted to kind of shift the conversation, if you don't mind, a little bit to talk about the opioid crisis, or, I find it awkward to call it a crisis because I think it's really the ongoing addiction crisis, right, Tom? And what is the struggle, and what is it that sometimes I think people don't really understand what we're talking about?
Well, and it's another issue that I think both the pandemic has kind of laid bare, because it really presses on a lot of pressure points for people. You have an addiction issue, which touches on mental health issues, which touches on issues of being confined at home, and only exacerbates the aggravating factors for someone who may be struggling with an addiction already. And in 2020, I think we saw a 26% increase in opioid overdose deaths in Montgomery County alone. I think it was almost 20% across the state. And so you take someone who may already be struggling with addiction, and then you add in possibly loss of a job, living at home with someone who may not be in the most supportive relationship if you're in a domestically abusive relationship, and you turn to drugs or alcohol for that relief, and you don't have your normal level of normalcy in your life. You can't get up and go to work and do what you need to do. And I think we really saw a lot more people, succumb to those addictions, and that really was exacerbated by the pandemic.
What I found shocking was I was watching a commercial one night, and they were talking to parents in the commercial. Do you know what's in your medicine cabinet, and is it still there? And it was addressing the issue that kids were taking prescription medication that their parents had been prescribed. Maybe they didn't finish it or whatever the case is. And that actually shocked me that kids would do that. Did you see that?
Well, I think you do see it, and you see it, kids, under 18 or young adults, and they are looking for that high or that escape, as the case may be, and really not thinking it through, which is what, kids and young adults often do, is they don't think things through. And they find that they enjoyed that release or that high, or sometimes it's not even the high, it's the kind of numbing effect of, the depression that my life is so miserable, I just want to not feel anything. And, they'll go through and find things and try it just because they think it's relatively safe, not realizing the, highly addictive nature of a lot of those prescription medications.
And I know that there is a policy, I think, with the police and the state's attorney's office, is they're not for people who call for help when there's an overdose. Can you expand on that?
Yes, I think in 2020, the Montgomery County Police have launched a program called COPE, Community Opioid Prevention and Education. And that's one of the things that they push. And there's also another program called Speak Up, Save a Life, promoting education among students, among young adults, that even if you purchased the drugs and you call for help, if you gave the drugs to somebody else, you're not going to be prosecuted for calling for help, because the goal of the Good Samaritan law is to encourage people to save lives, not to punish you for making the call, but really to encourage people for making that call to help save lives. So it's not unusual. And fentanyl is a huge cause of the increase in opioid overdose deaths. It's not unusual that you have a group.
Let me stop you for a second. Can you describe for the audience what is the relationship of fentanyl with the ODs and why?
Right. So fentanyl, oftentimes you hear about an opioid overdose. Fentanyl is a synthetic opioid, which is 50 to 100 times more potent than morphine and up to 50 times more powerful than heroin. And oftentimes it's mixed in or cut with some other opioid. And that, if you don't know what you're getting, causes the overdose. Or if you've been weaned off of heroin and now you go back, your body can't adjust to it. And that's where you hear the effect of Narcan. And one of the things that this police unit does is go out and educate people, help provide Narcan, so that if you know of someone who's using, you can help save their life. But oftentimes you'll have kids who get together, 3 or 4, and somebody brings the drugs and there's an overdose. It used to be that everyone would run and the police wouldn't know what happens. So instead of trying to prosecute and charge criminally those kids, what you want somebody to stay, call 911, get the help. You can save that life and be immune from prosecution. So you don't have to run because you're afraid. Stay and save the life. Don't run out of fear.
And with regard to the signs for parents or for, friends and family who may have not realized that they've got someone in their home that is having addiction issues, can you share what some of those signs or heads up that if you notice what you should do?
Well, I mean, I think one of the first things you should do is, as a parent, if you have someone else in the house, go through your medicine cabinet, get rid of those expired drugs or opioids that you might have. You know, you had a wisdom tooth pulled, maybe you have a couple of pills in there. Go through, clean them out, get rid of them. Most of the drugstores will have a prescription surrender, so you can take it, you can turn it in. They don't want you flushing it for environmental reasons, but you can take it, you can surrender it and know that it's going to be taken care of. Much like alcohol and other types of addictive behaviors, you want to watch for changes in behaviors, not just moody teenagers, but substantial changes in behaviors, changes in their friend circle, a need for money. You also want to look at the physical appearance. Are they more disheveled? Are they more withdrawn than normal? And then oftentimes you're going to see some associated weight loss or weight gain, depending upon the type of drug. So look for changes in that person in your life. And then they are going to tend to be withdrawn, and you're not going to see them as often as you would have. So those are some things you can look for, and try to have a discussion with them. But get the unused drugs and medications out of there first, so you kind of help remove that temptation.
Yeah, that's really tough because once you remove the temptation, the conversation about getting treatment is a tough one, because you have to get them to be in agreement that there is an issue and that they need treatment, which raises the issue of mental health. And maybe they're also self-medicating because of an underlying mental health issue, who knows? But mental health has a certain stigma to it that not many people want to avoid the appearance of weakness or having to get treatment. How does the legal system deal with mental health from your experience?
Well, I think it varies a lot from person to person and family to family. And if you are working and you have good health care and you can have access to good mental health treatment, then chances are better that you're going to be able to access those things. Oftentimes, just as you described, you may have someone who has an undiagnosed underlying mental health issue and they're self-medicating with alcohol or prescription or illegal drugs. And it takes some time to peel back those layers in order to get that. But oftentimes those things may manifest themselves in a traffic stop and an arrest for driving under the influence of alcohol, a charge for some sort of misdemeanor drug possession, or buying or selling drugs. So when it gets to that point, there's oftentimes a mental health component that leads to that, or is co-occurring with the addiction behavior as well as the mental health issue, which is a whole nother set of issues. It's not like we used to think you just throw somebody in the drunk tank and dry them out. We're trying to get at the root cause of the problem in the legal system.
And Martha, I know that you mentioned that one of the disabilities that you work with is the mental health disabilities. And what are some of the challenges that you have found in doing that?
Yeah, well, most of the people that come to us for services, they come through the Department of Education. It's a branch called Division of Rehabilitation Services. So by the time they get to us, most of them are ready to work. They're taking medication, they're following the instructions of the psychiatrist, they're going for therapy. So they're in a good place to go and work and be productive. And part of the healing process, in a way, is finding a job and working. It helps a lot. we have dealt with some difficult situations in which we're not able to place the person. If I see that the case needs more attention from a doctor, I refer them back to their doctor or therapy and don't place them because we don't want to place someone that is unstable in a job, you know. We want to place people that are ready to work.
So when you're seeing these folks coming, and if they're watching, what would you tell them and encourage them, in a minute or less, to take seriously about their mental health?
Well, I think everybody wants to work. Everybody wants to be productive and pull their own weight. And I know mothers are telling them work, 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 but they themselves know that they want to work. And the moment they work, things change for good, I can assure you. So if that means taking your medication, follow instructions by a doctor, go ahead, do it, come to us, we can help with employment. Jessa has also mental therapy, mental health therapy. So any questions, they can address it to me and I'll find the right person to talk to. Is it okay if I give my phone number?
Absolutely. You're more than welcome to.
Thank you. So it's 301-461-8753. In my department, we speak like 6 different languages. Just FYI, we have very qualified staff. We have like 4 people that speak Spanish, including me, my original language. But there is Russian, Ukrainian, German, there's Jewish, not Jewish, Hebrew, sorry. So we are very well equipped to help a lot of people.
Well, that's the last word on that. We have run out of time, unfortunately. It goes so fast. I'd like to thank my guests for joining me, the audience for watching, and check us out on YouTube, Facebook, and we'll see you next time. Good night.